Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Stu and I are back. Um, we were a little delayed by technical difficulties around here, which happen to me on some sort of regular basis. I don't know, it's a poltergeist or something that just gets into my computer and says, no, we're not going to let you do that today, but if you wait 2 days, we're going to let you do it. And so, in the meantime, much anguish and angst, and then one morning you wake up and yeah, and it's working, and we really don't know what we did to fix it. So, if it happens again, we have to go through the anguish and angst again, and perhaps you have some of the same problems. If so, you will sympathize with the fact that we are a little delayed in this particular lesson 15. This is lesson 15. We are going to be continuing our conversation about the minor mode and minor scales, and singing a familiar melody in two different forms. So, first, I'm going to remind you that last week we talked about the minor mode and said that the half steps are in a different place. They're actually between 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 instead of between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8, which makes a major scale. And the difference is significant. So, Stu, I wonder if you would play an E major scale, please. Okay, now he's going to start on E and play an E minor scale. It sounds completely different. Well, you played a fancy one. Okay, could you play an E minor natural scale? Natural minor. Okay, that's an E minor scale with no alterations in it. And it has exactly the same white keys as a G major scale. But starting on E instead of on G. I know I'm losing you right now, but I'm just saying that the place that you put half steps is what changes the quality of a scale completely. So, composers have found over the years that there are different ways to play with a minor scale such that the harmonies are a little bit more useful. And one of the things that they missed in the major scale was that half step between 7 and 8. It's the most useful thing for harmony. But the minor scale doesn't have it. It has that instead of. And so composers find that very frustrating, and so they just decided wholesale to just go around changing the scale. So they took an E minor scale and they just put a raised seventh in it. The seventh note of the scale, which is a D, gets played as D sharp. So would you play that now? All right. That should sound familiar. There are a lot of cultures that use that scale more than any other. I always call it snake charmer music. But this interval is hard to sing. It's beautiful to play. It's hard to sing. And so in some vocal music, they avoid that interval just because it's hard for singers to sing, particularly going down. That's particularly hard to sing in tune. So they have a third version of the minor scale in which they go up with the raised seventh and they eliminate it on the way down to make it easier on singers. Would you do that, please?
Melodic minor.
Melodic minor. So in that case, they raise the sixth and the seventh notes, which in this case are C and D, played as C sharp and D sharp. That's really easy to sing because it's melodic. It's almost like a major scale. But going down, they go back to the original minor. There's no reason for you to remember anything I just said, except to know that minor scales come in different forms and that it's possible to look at a piece of music and say, not only is this in E minor, but it's an E natural minor or E harmonic minor or E melodic minor, depending on the needs of the composer and the harmonies. Enough of that nonsense. So we are going to think about the difference between a major and a minor scale in terms of mood. And we talked about this last time too. I was going to say last week, but it was more than a week ago. We talked about it because a composer has a choice. When a composer is deciding to set a particular text to music, remember we're talking about songs here, we're talking about songs that have words. And so there's words and there's text and there's meaning and there's emotion. And the composer looks at all of that and says, what kind of a scale, what kind of harmony, what kind of sound do I want to use to get my emotional point across? Composers are always trying to manipulate their listeners, and it works. Sometimes we cry when we listen to a piece of music. Sometimes we laugh. Sometimes we're startled. Sometimes we're angry. All kinds of emotions can be elicited because of the music that the composer chooses. And the scale and the key that the composer chooses is one of the main ways that they manipulate us emotionally. Generally speaking, humans respond to a minor key with sad emotions, or perhaps frightened emotions, or nostalgic emotions, things that make us feel quite emotional usually in a negative way. And many of us, I'm included in this, find the minor key more beautiful. Generally speaking, I'm very attracted to minor melodies. There's just something very satisfying about feeling those kinds of emotions. Um, and so composers generally use that kind of a mode to make a sort of a negative point. And I'm going to give you an example. There is an Irish folk song that is some 300 years old called Johnny, I Hardly Knew Ya. It's a war protest song. It's a sad lyric. Most Irish folk songs are sad. It's a sad lyric about the woman's response to the condition of her guy when he comes back from fighting in a war. In one of the verses, which I'm not going to sing, there's a reference to Ceylon. And since this is such an old song, I guess it has some reference to a war that was probably waged by the British Empire in Ceylon, which was a British protectorate at some point. And the Irish soldier was sent to go fight, and he comes back and he's missing an arm, and he's missing a leg, and he's missing an eye, and he's a mess, and he has no body fat, and he's, skin and bones. And his woman looks at him and says, Johnny, I hardly knew you. It's a very well-known song. I suspect you know it. And it is in a minor key. So, Stu, if you would just give me some chords. Just give me an E minor chord so I know what I'm doing here. Thank you. When on the road to sweet Athy, hurroo, hurroo. When on the road to sweet Athy, hurroo, hurroo. When on the road to sweet Athy, a stick in the hand, a drop in the eye, a doleful damsel I heard cry, Johnny, I hardly knew ya. Where are the eyes that looked so mild, hurroo, hurroo? Oh, where are the eyes that looked so mild, hurroo, hurroo? Oh, where are the eyes that looked so mild when my poor heart you first beguiled? Why did you run from me and the child? Johnny, I hardly knew ya. With your guns and drums and drums and guns, hurroo, hurroo. With your guns and drums and drums and guns, hurroo, hurroo. With your guns and drums and drums and guns, the enemy nearly slew ya. Oh, my darling dear, you look so queer, Johnny, I hardly knew ya. Oh, where are the legs that used to run, hurroo, hurroo? Oh, where are the legs that used to run, hurroo, hurroo? Oh, where are the legs that used to run when first you started to carry a gun? Oh, I fear your dancing days are done, Johnny, I hardly knew ya. Actually, there's a lot more verses. This is one of those Irish folk songs that can go on and on and on. And it being a folk song, we don't know who wrote it, and we don't know the original source, and we can't go back and say this is the actual definitive version of the song. So chances are you've heard it before, maybe sung it before slightly differently from that, but that's the basic one. The one I found on YouTube that I really liked was done by Tommy Makem and the Clancy brothers. Everything they do is wonderful and authentic. And I would recommend you go and listen to them sing it, and you'll really understand the Irish approach to war and what it does to the soldiers. Now, time goes on, and there's the the creation of a new country, the United States. And after about 100 years of existence, the United States went into a civil war. People within the same country fighting against each other over a particular issue. And for some reason, by that time, the Scotch-Irish influence on our folk music, on the American folk music, was enormous. And a lot of tunes that were brought here from Scotch-Irish immigrants had been included in our own folk music, but the difference was we didn't sing everything all sort of sad and depressed. That's not the American spirit. The American spirit is all rah-rah, and everything's great, and everything's strong, and everything's happy, and everything's going forward and prosperous and awesome. That's the American spirit, and if you listen to a lot of American folk song, you'll hear a lot of that. And they took that tune, they didn't even change it to major, they kept it minor, but they changed the words. And it became When Johnny Comes Marching Home Again, hurrah, hurrah. And you've probably sung that one too, When Johnny Comes Marching Home Again. So let's sing that. Stu's going to play the piano for this one. So it's going to be da 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 da, like that. When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. The men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. Get ready for the Jubilee, hurrah, hurrah. Get ready for the Jubilee, hurrah, hurrah. The laurel wreath is ready now to place upon his loyal brow, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. According to things I've read, both sides, the North and the South, sang that song. They both had the same hurrah feeling. They both had the same kind of joyous, let's send the boys off with a great big parade, and we'll wave our flags, and we'll be excited and joyous. And at the beginning of the Civil War, they actually went out in their buggies and watched the battles as a form of entertainment. That was the way Americans thought this was going to go. They thought it would be quick. They thought it would be relatively painless, and how wrong they were. And it wouldn't surprise me to know that a number of Americans ended up singing Johnny, I Hardly Knew You by the end of that war, as we do at the end of every war. When our soldiers, men and women, come back different, changed, worse than they were. But it's interesting to think about songs that cross the pond, as I like to say, from Europe to the United States, the difference in the song as it changes, slightly changes cultures. The language may be the same, but the culture is different and the emotion is different. Let's sing When Johnny Comes Marching Home Again. I want to tell you about that second verse, because not many people know it. I'm reading it myself. Get ready for the Jubilee. Hurrah, hurrah. We'll give the, what is that? We'll give the hero 3 times 3. Hurrah, hurrah. The laurel wreath is ready now to place upon his loyal brow, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. Get ready for the Jubilee, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give the hero 3 times 3, hurrah, hurrah. The laurel wreath is ready now to place upon his loyal brow. I'll send you these lyrics as an email attachment. Anyway, both verses, please, of Johnny Comes Marching Home. When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. The men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out, and we'll all be gay when Johnny comes marching home. Get ready for the Jubilee, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give the hero 3 times 3, hurrah, hurrah. The laurel wreath is ready now to place upon his loyal brow. We'll all be gay when Johnny comes marching home. So here's a little prayer that we never have to sing that song again, that we never send boys off to do crazy things like fight in a war, and that song just becomes a piece of history. I have no problem with singing it as a piece of history. I don't want to sing it for any other reason. I don't know about you. Have a great week. We'll see you next week with something else in minor mode. Thanks, Stu.
You're welcome.
Bye.